Hello. Today we're going to be painting a bright green landscape with lush grass and foliage. It's got a dramatic sky with big fluffy clouds, and it's got a lovely pond leading into the foreground. I'm going to show you how to paint these clouds and how to paint the foliage and how the two use a similar technique, and also how to create interesting reflections on the pond. If you found these subjects difficult to manage in the past, don't worry about it. I'm going to break it all down into simple, easy to manage steps. So let's get started. I'll begin with the drawing. We've got a big sky. The focal area is this part of the paper, and then we've got a pond leading into the foreground. So the sky is the biggest shape, then the foreground, distant hills, and then the pond. As usual, I turn my paper over and thoroughly wet the back. While that's absorbing the water, let's mix some paint. We've got a light blue sky. I'm going to throw in a few clouds. And then we've got the ground. So the sky is primarily cobalt blue. And I'm going to mix just a very small amount of very weak cad orange. There we go, barely tinting the paper. And I'll do the same with some permanent rose. That'll do. And the grass is very lush and green, so for that I'll start with some aureolin or any lemon leaning or cool leaning yellow will do. A little bit of cobalt turquoise. And that gives us quite a bright green. But I'm going to dull it just fractionally and cool it down at the same time with just a little bit of French ultramarine. Still a bit too green. I'll add some raw umber as well. Just going to take a moment to throw in a few cows. Put one here. These are very simple shapes. It's a cow from behind. I'm doing simple cows like this. I'll just start with a rectangle, throw the neck down. And that'll do. I must have had some green on the top of the cobalt blue and it was just showing through in the colour, so I'm going to use some cleaner paint. That gives us a much fresher colour for the sky. Perfect. I'm going to have a big cloud here, smaller one probably there, and then a medium cloud there. Pick up the brush. And it's just really just a pushing action, just creating the shapes for my clouds. See how the point's not touching the paper. There's a few little hairs sticking to the paper that are giving us the cloud shape. And very quickly I'll fill this area in. Dilute that and come in with the base of the cloud. I'll run this down into the hill. Clean the brush. Then I'll go in with this cad orange. And I'm just touching some of the edge of these cloud shapes. You have to do this while the sky is still wet. You don't want to touch all of them because you still want some bright, untouched paper there. Run that down. Then I'll go in with some of this pink. The permanent rose mixes with hints of the blue and some of the cad orange to give us greys within the cloud. I'll go back in with some of this blue here and just break up this big cloud shape. My aim is just to create interesting patterns in my sky. Now I'm going to very quickly mix a colour for that distant hill. Some aureolin, raw umber, cobalt turquoise. A bit too much turquoise there. Now that's a lot more than I need, and it's still a bit too bright. I'll use it later when I'm doing the trees. So what I'm going to do here is mix another little puddle. Still a bit too dark now. I'll add a bit of cobalt blue too. Great. So I've got the colour, it just needs to be lightened quite a bit. Now if we look at my board at this stage, this mark tells me the hill area is too wet for me to create the hill I want. I'm waiting for this to dry so that I can paint the top of this hill. I don't have a lot of paint in my brush. See how the brush is not bouncing back to a point. Doing that on purpose because I don't want the paint to flow up very much. Here's the closer hill. And then behind these buildings, we've got some bigger trees. For that, just pick up some of this green here. Add some raw umber. Just trying to create a dull green that's darker in tone. Vary the colour a bit. Many of these shapes will be covered with the foreground or middle distance trees pretty soon. Then we've got the grass. As I'm coming forward, I'm increasing the tone of the grass. Because I wet the back of the paper, it's allowed the front of the paper to stay wet longer. And even though I don't have a lot of paint there, it's still wet enough that it's continuing to flow down the paper. Just going to add some more texture to the foreground. Just splattering some darker paint. Very light taps because this is quite a big brush. Just throw in some burnt sienna into this mix. It'll mix with the green and dull, but it'll just add a little bit of extra warmth in the foreground. Because of the effect of atmosphere, similar objects, like in this case the grass in the distance versus the ground in the foreground grasses will be warmer looking and stronger in tone than the ones in the distance, and they'll have a bit more detail. Effectively, this splatter is throwing in some more detail relative to the grass in the distance. Notice I didn't do anything with the water. You can't paint the water until you finish painting the objects that are going to be reflected in it. So I've left the water untouched at this stage. Just to speed things up, I'm going to get the hairdryer on this. I've only dried the very top layer of the paper. I haven't dried the paper underneath. Otherwise I'd have to re-wet the back. We're now going to paint these trees in the middle distance. And they're not very big, so I'll be using my size 8 brush for most of this. We've got this very dark green here. Don't want it to go into all these other colours, but again, barely touching the paper, leaving plenty of gaps or bird holes. I'm adding some cad orange to this mix. There's some poplars here that are just starting to turn. Some more here. I find the fan brush works really well with these poplars. Just a little flick up and then strokes to the side. When you're putting trees in, keep an eye out for any areas of your painting you want to cover over, because this is a good time to do that. I'm reasonably happy with what I've got here at the moment, so I'm not looking to adjust too much. Vary the colour a bit. Got some reeds along the water's edge. This is a hoghair fan brush. It's very good for creating these grass shapes. You can flick it up or just dab with it. The secret with using the brush like this is not to press very hard in your paper. And you'll find it will reward you with some lovely shapes that are just very quick and easy to make. Now, because the light's coming from this direction, there'll be areas of these trees that are in shadow. So I'll just add more paint. Mainly French ultramarine and a bit of raw umber into that overall mix. But don't put everything in shadow. The main thing is to put plenty of variation between the height and the shapes of the trees so that it doesn't look like you're creating a manicured hedge. Just hinting at some long shadows in the grass in the distance. It's probably a bit too dark, but so I'll just lighten it a bit. We're now going to paint the water, and it's going to be reflecting some of the distant hill and also the sky. Compositionally, I want more blue in the water, so I'm going to take some artistic license and not worry too much about reflections of these clouds in the distance. So when you're painting reflections, the reflection will be a little bit duller than the object reflecting. So while we're reflecting this blue sky, it's not going to be as bright as the sky because the reflection merges with the colour of the water. So I've got some cobalt blue here. I'm going to add a little bit of burnt sienna because the pond was quite muddy. Just hint at that. And I'm leaving a few little areas of untouched paper there just to add some glitter at the water's edge. Now we're going to be reflecting some of those trees there. Another good reason to mix plenty of paint: when you come to do the reflections, you've got paint left over that you can use for the reflection. Again, try to leave a little bit of the blue showing through. At the water's edge, you quite often get a darker shadow area, so just mixed a dark green. Mainly French ultramarine, bit of burnt sienna and aureolin. Darken some of these shadows. But if you put a shadow in the tree, make sure you throw in its reflection. Get some raw umber. just run that along the edge of that pond. So there'd be mud in that area. Again, I'm not getting rid of all the little white speckles there. Just clean my brush and throw in a few ripples on the water. Not too many. Just hinted a few trunks. Get my fan brush and throw in a few grasses along the water's edge. And I'll break up this distant edge. And hint at some grass. I'll grab some burnt sienna dulled with some of this Cobalt Blue, and I'll use that for the roof of this little shed. Just some raw sienna, again dulled with some of the blue mix for the side of the shed. We don't need to do too much detail there because these are buildings and objects that are a long way away. Alright, I'm going to dry this and then I can finish up this water's edge and the cows and a few other things. Just some burnt sienna and cobalt blue for these cows. When you're painting the cows, make sure you don't make their heads too big. It's a common mistake. Underneath the body of the cow will be in shadow. And I'm going to just lift a bit of a highlight. That'll give the cows a bit more form. And there'll be a shadow underneath in the grass, so I'll just get my fan brush, just dab the brush like that. That helps connect the cows to the ground. I'll break up this water's edge, some grass. Vary the colour here and there. And then this area here, I'm going to throw in some bigger grasses. But whatever you do, don't paint in 1,000 blades of grass. All these shapes are just the shorthand to say there's longer grass here. And the grass closer to you will be bigger than the grass in the distance. Obviously, if someone's mowed the grass in the foreground, it's going to be shorter. Just drag the brush over the grass just to create hints of undulations. Smaller marks will read as birds further in the distance. I'm going to clean my brush and just lighten this area here. And that will hint as a reflection of that cloud up here. Use my fingernail to scrape in a few lighter trunks. Again, you don't want to overdo it. I think we've lost our truck there, but we didn't really need it. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please give it a like, and if you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, please do so. And if you're able, please consider supporting me on Patreon. I look forward to seeing you for the next one.